Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can, yeah. Good.
That is good. These are
What's
some new headphones I haven't used here before, so
oh,
maybe
right,
it's a
yeah.
bit crazy.
They're not going crazy, I can hear you. How are things?
Yeah, they're good. I mean, I'm still getting used to, lockdown 3 life. I've
Yeah.
locked my door against my 4-year-old, so that feels a bit weird.
Yeah, it's quite
But
a strange one this time round. It feels like a lot more kind of restrictive somehow. Don't know.
yeah, maybe it's because we've just, it's like we've had it hard already. And we don't want to we're ready for it to stop. I am.
I know, yeah, I know, absolutely.
And yeah, it is tough. And also the homeschooling bit for me has just been like tough. um so trying to do that and work full time, and my partner working remotely full time and everything. But one thing that we have done, I convinced our board to let everybody in the company have 12 personal days this year that we can take.
Oh, that's
Because I
good.
personally am not able to do an 8-hour day with regularity at the moment.
No, I think it's quite a challenge, especially, I mean, particularly with kids, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Seems like
and my colleague Mackenzie is moving right now. That has its own set of issues with COVID. Um, so, yeah, it is a tricky time. But on the other hand, there is good stuff happening. We're doing the final bit of our testing for our virtual career product that we're launching
oh,
next month. So
yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah, you were
And
saying about that last time we talked, yeah.
yeah, uh, so I'm definitely excited about that happening. And I've been learning the piano. That's been fun.
Ah.
Yeah, I got that to beat the COVID winter blues.
Playing Winter Blues. Yeah, my partner and I got one in the first lockdown. I managed to
Yeah,
get like an amazing like electric piano that was quite yeah, it was brilliant. But
nice.
haven't really have to say haven't really used it that much.
Yeah. Well, they look nice and they're a nice piece of furniture anyway.
Yeah, although yours
What
looks a
I
bit
keep
nicer than
telling
ours.
myself, if I don't keep up with it. But I've been playing every day. I've gotten really into it. I
That's
just gave
good.
my friend a little recital last night.
Well, hey, well done. Yeah, that's way more impressive.
Yeah, it's been good. So I think we're about ready to get started. Uh, Here we've got quite a few participants joining us. Thank you, everyone. Hello, my name is Annika Eriksson, and I am the founder and CEO of Articheck. And I am joined by Matthew Auger. Am I saying that correctly?
Ager.
Ager,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Apologies.
It really doesn't matter. It's fine.
And Tomorrow Contemporary is the name of your business. We're here to talk about that. It's exciting. Oh,
Yeah, yes,
they're asking me to speak more
absolutely.
loudly. Hold on, let me turn up the volume. Is that better, everyone? Too loud? Good? What do you think, Matthew?
I can hear you fine, but maybe other people can't. I don't know.
Okay. Well, okay. Eve Black is saying that's better. Okay, good. So let me get my questions out that I have for you. I mean, the very first thing I believe is, can you tell us a little bit more about you and your background and your kind of story?
Yeah. Well, I think this has sort of come about at quite an interesting time, just due to the fact that obviously there are many limitations currently in the art world, and sort of limitations towards seeing exhibitions and artwork particularly. My background is in art, and I'm an artist, and I'm trained as an artist, and this kind of came about due to a conversation with a friend who I've known for years, and we started talking about who comes from a very different background in terms of professionally, comes from a much more of a commercial sort of realization and digital background. And we got talking over lockdown, and yeah, sort of kind of shed some light on the possibilities of how a digital experience can mimic or kind of represent reality. And so I feel like it became really evident that I suppose the lockdown and also the art world was maybe not exactly up on it when it came to technology. So yeah, kind of naturally evolved in this way of us exploring, scanning some of my work, scanning other people's work, and then sort of communicating it quite organically to people that I knew in the art world. And sort of as a result, we kind of came up with these solutions to sort of 3D scanning sculptures of mine, like I said, and just when I say 3D scanning, I suppose that means experiencing digitally an object in the round, if that makes sense. So, being able to click on an object, turn it round, have, mimic reality in terms of how you kind of experience it. I've got some things.
Challenge, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think I've made sculpture for a number of years, and I think it's really just something that I've always struggled with in terms of documentation. So if someone on the other side of the world wants to look at a work and wants more detail, or wants more, wants to experience it, it's like, well, how do you do that? And how can you, without, because really they benefit from being seen in reality. So I guess that was the kind of like crux of this problem. And then a friend of mine and I just started discussing it, and his technical knowledge and background was just amazing. And so we then sort of developed this way of kind of, I guess, yeah, solving the issue of like how to look at artwork during a pandemic when no one can go anywhere and no one can go to a gallery. So yeah, kind of really putting our minds together and coming up with essentially an object file that you could then navigate. And I've actually, it sort of sometimes seems a little bit, it is quite difficult to explain without really showing it. So I have got some things up that I could sort of show in more of an illustrative way that doesn't, basically everyone can see what I'm banging on about.
A picture speaks 1,000 words, Matthew, which is why we're here, right? Talking about this in the first place.
Exactly. The host has disabled my screen sharing ability.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't personal. It's how it is. Hold on, let me change the setting. Okay, try.
But yeah, I think I can sort of run through some of the works in which, let's have a look. So this, for example, is, can people see this? You should be able to see a sculpture which is got lots of felt tip drawings on it, felt tip lines on it. This is actually an artist called Zebedee Armstrong, who's an outsider artist from the States. Well, he is no longer with us, but he was this just really interesting artist, and I wound up buying some of his work years ago. And this was kind of like one of the real sort of turning points of realizing what 3D scanning using the process of photogrammetry, which I can explain in a little bit, has kind of achieved. So this is an illustration of, this is me being able to maneuver the object, and literally you can visit, people that are watching, you can visit Sketchfab and Tomorrow Contemporary, and I can list the links of where to see this and how to see these works and how to interact with them a little bit more. But essentially, this is the sculpture, and this is the way that we then decided was just kind of an incredible way of seeing the artwork. So in terms of the detail of, I mean, this is a piece of wood painted white with felt tip lines on it. These are called doomsday clocks. A bit about history. These are called doomsday clocks, and they are clocks that this chap had made. He was claimed to have been visited by an angel after working in a box making factory for years and years and years. And these were his predictions of the end of the world. So these are called his doomsday clocks. And
wow, cool.
They were actually, I first saw them on show. They were on show at Frith Street Gallery.
Oh, maybe that's where I'm thinking of.
Curated by Cornelia Parker's husband. He made this whole show, Jeff McMillan, he made this show, and these were part of it. Anyway, really interesting, and a really interesting illustration of just like what can be achieved in terms of how to see a sculpture. So this is kind of where a lot of it, well, I won't show you the other things which were probably a bit more clunky with some of the things that we've shown, but these are the good examples that were early days. This is another one by an artist called Sebastian Jefford. This is made from polyurethane cast foam pieces that are then poppered onto each other and then drawn into. And basically, it's made on an armature with plaster of Paris. And it's just incredible how much detail can be shown in terms of the back of the work and the detail inside of this chicken wire and plasterform. So I'm hoping that the quality translates to a screen share button.
Yeah.
So essentially, these were, yeah, just the beginnings of this project, and so in essence, to explain briefly what this file is, it's an OBJ file, which is,
we're getting comments saying excellent quality. The screen share.
That's nice. Oh, good. And so these would be like, so these would be made up of between, because this sculpture is, the dimensions are actually listed underneath it, 85 centimeters tall. So to gauge that is something, an object of this size, I think we were processing 500 to 600, maybe more actually now thinking back, still images, which we would take in a lit studio with a color checker to mimic. So essentially, you know, really what our goal was to mimic like reality. And I think that those were some of the things that, in my experience of sifting through the internet and finding some of the other things that were available, just sort of didn't really do it. And after lots of research, realizing that there's lots of potential laser scanning and LiDAR cameras that can, LiDAR being sort of, it would detect distance and then throw back texture. So you build up the image using lasers, but really
LiDAR's been amazing for the archaeology sector, hasn't it? It's like completely changed the whole sector. There's something like 4,000 new archaeological sites they've discovered because of LiDAR imaging technology from planes and satellites and stuff, looking down in jungles and sand, because you can penetrate sand and see beneath it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I think even in sort of advanced engineering, they've been doing it so that you can scan the land and be able to detect what's underneath it prior to digging and things like this. Yeah. I think like, yeah, we're just, you know, some people, you know, yeah, we've decided to go down the photogrammetry route, which is more analog in some respects, but the benefits are realism. So I think that for us, it became something that was really, really just such a selling point to sort of like stick with. So that's, I sort of rattle through. We started doing some other, these are some more sort of commercial things for Stephen Friedman Gallery. And
they were our very first customer.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Shout out to Stephen Friedman Gallery.
And so with these works, I think we ended up coming up against some challenges with photogrammetry because, well, also regardless of whether it's laser or photogrammetry, I think there are limitations to do with materials. So shiny materials, feathers, fabric, things that move, like they are virtually impossible, because if you think about it, you know, like this is made up of over 1,000 images. And if you have over 1,000 images that are making, you know, if anything, if this was, right, but actually we've developed a really nice way of mimicking that reflectivity in post. So these heads, the globe heads, are actually glossy, but this is a post glossy effect to make it the right sheen. So we've been able to sort of like develop that in a way that is just succinct to mimic what it is. Because essentially, if you think you take a reflective, for example, if you take a photograph of a reflective object, the thing that's making it reflective is the light bouncing off of it. So like you're looking at a shiny, you know, yeah, like you're looking at this shiny head, for example, and you take an image here, you can see that this part around the top of the head is going to be reflecting the light that's coming down here, which means in the image there is no data. So like that is not going to make up a 3D image. So anyway, we've managed to do that in a way which is just thanks to the digital side of Tomorrow Contemporary, which is like really fantastic in that way. And we've managed to do some really, you know, getting the details on these has been really, really rewarding, just in terms of like how much this can mimic what it is.
Well, and so important to the sector, because otherwise people just wouldn't use it, would they? I mean, we're talking about very visual people, both collectors and gallerists and artists, you know, everyone involved is
absolutely, yeah, totally,
probably an aesthetic perfectionist, you know. And
yeah, and I think, you know, what we wanted to do was to really marry that, you know, quality, accuracy and realism all together, and have that like really just materialize in a way that was like satisfactory, or just not even satisfactory, like beyond that really. And so these are actually now all embedded on the Stephen Friedman Gallery website. So you can see these at the bottom of Yinka Shonibari's like selected artworks pages. They are now on view. And so, yeah, this is just another example. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm sort of just going off on one, but essentially that sort of sums up a little bit of kind of what we've been doing in terms of the 3D scanning of artworks. There are other avenues which we've also been working with and pursuing a little bit more intensely at the moment, which is really exciting. And maybe I should just quickly show you those.
Yeah, please do. Although I do want to just mention before we move on, I remember from our first conversation that one of the things that you felt was a kind of a unique selling point of what you do is the fact that your setup is mobile and you can go to the work.
Yeah, so I think like, you know, I've worked in and out of the art world for quite a long time now, and actually for me, realizing that it was something that was very, you know, cost is such a huge part of a gallery's you know, it's needless to say, like it's a hugely expensive endeavor, and if you can travel, it's, you know, often it's less expensive for the people to travel to the artwork than the artwork to travel to the people. So we have wound up shooting these. These have been shot in various viewing rooms in different places, because the controlled environment makes it far more easier and cost effective than the gallery shipping the artwork from the storage to the gallery. Or
let me just say, as a conservator, and also, you know, ArtEvolve being all about condition and risk, it's you know, less risk to the art if it doesn't have to move. That's the riskiest moment.
Right, exactly. And I think, like, I mean, not, you know, I think that eye to detail is really helpful. Like that specific kind of, you know, my experience in the art world, for example, would be able, you know, we would do our best to, you know, we do our best to take care of the work, obviously, and also we're doing our best to take our experience into that realm. So, you know, taking the experience of the technician side of things, or having contacts with people that are used to handling work of high value, and then like that becomes a whole nother sort of swathe of concern that just doesn't need to be an issue with the gallery. So I think that that's been like a real interesting point for us.
Yes, because we were in fact introduced by Kit Merritt, who is also an art handler and technician,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
for Stephen Friedman even in the past.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there you
go on, sorry.
I know, you know, art technicians. Why don't you show us a few of these other things that you mentioned?
So
also check out the chat. I see that we've got some questions in chat, and then in my little list of questions, one of the other things I want to ask soon is about how this technology has kind of improved in recent years, and how that might relate to its adoption in the art world, and kind of, you know, what might be specifically the art world applications. And so we'll talk about that in a minute.
I could probably just talk about that as we go. I mean, I think that really I think from, you know, we have people on board that are far more technically experienced than I am in terms of the digital side of things. I think that is where really it thrives, because there's different, you know, we have people that have been working on huge projects for huge commercial enterprises, which are pushing boundaries, which hopefully we can bring to the art scene. Hopefully we can bring to the art world, because, you know, a lot of this is pioneered in real estate, super high-end real estate. Virtual tours were, you know, really about probably very high-end, like architecture and also real estate. Whether they fall into the same bracket, I don't know. But I think that the pandemic has just forced people to like get on board with that, because, you know, there's no real because. I think it just has. And I think, you know, we've been making some virtual tours of galleries as well, and this is one of the exhibition currently on at Stephen Friedman Gallery. And did
you say you're using Matterport for this? Is that right or not?
No. So we have kind of come up with some troubles with Matterport, because Matterport is a fully automated service, and so the cameras that are linked with Matterport restrict any editing of colors. And for example, this would be impossible to change in any way if when doing the shoot, the Matterport camera registered these colors as wrong, or registered the white balance is slightly off, which does happen frequently. then it becomes a real issue for the client, and also for us, because the experience that we have is that yeah, if the colors are off, then the paintings don't look correct, and you might as well not be showing it. So
Right.
it's quite you know,
absolutely. I mean, these colors look great. I don't have the original to compare them to, but they do look
well,
satisfying.
what we did is we've used another software and managed to do things like this, which is just a hyperlink off the label of the artwork, which has the studio shot image. So then we go back to this, and obviously the lighting is different during the exhibition because you've got different spotlights creating different hotspots. But this can be navigated via this. So this is the rest of the exhibition, and so
going through
this
here
is
making me feel really nostalgic. I have to say, I miss private views at Stephen Friedman Gallery.
So we have ended up making an outdoor trip to the next gallery viewing room area here, and then this would be the next part of the exhibition. So we've used a different software, which means that we have manually built these tours, and this is a strange doll's house view.
We've got some questions to go through, but one that's just popped up that I'll ask now is, have you written your own software for this then, or are you using a third-party software? And if so,
no, we're using third-party software. We're using a software called Material to make the tours. Yeah. So should I answer some of these questions? Yeah, I can.
Let's see.
So
is it possible to apply different levels of gloss afterwards? This one. I guess so. So you talked about gloss, right?
Yes, this can be implemented like on different models. Yeah. So going back to these, if we're talking about some scans, yes, they can be. The scans are compatible. Are they compatible with other AR and gallery spaces, Vortic, Imperia? I haven't spoken to Imperia, but have spoken to Vortic, and they had some issues with importing some of these, and we are still working on a resolution, but we've actually worked with another third party through Stephen Friedman called Kunstmatrix, and they managed to do it just fine. So I think that Vortic were having some technical issues with it, and we do not know why. And I'm not sure about Imperia myself. Haven't spoken to them about whether they can be imported. The files are for these particular. So this is hosted on another, like the equivalent of YouTube for 3D models. This is called Sketchfab, and these are then hosted on there, and then they can be embedded onto a website. Now, depending on the size of the gallery, the size of the gallery, and in terms of hosting, that then needs to kind of often be, will have to be up to the gallery in terms of them being, them holding their own account, and then us managing the account for them, because these files can be imported into different softwares like SketchUp and other things. They're OBJ files and they have textures, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, it's not super straightforward. So it is a software that needs to be learnt. I feel like there's quite a few questions.
Yeah, there's some in the chat and there's some in the Q&A. Hold on, let me see here.
I was looking in the Q&A, maybe that's, yeah.
There, one that's interesting here for me is, from Suzanne Hargrove, these must be large files. How will Articheck handle them in our condition reports, and how will one do the annotation? So first of all, these must be large files. Yes, I would concur they must be. Are they? Can you confirm or deny?
Yeah, so these work in terms of, I keep just fiddling with this page, I should just leave it. These work in you, it's a little bit, it can exist a little bit like your your raw file, your high res, medium res, and low res. So we can export these at low res, and what that means is this object is made up of tiny little triangles, and that is the poly count. And so the poly count can vary from high, medium, low, whatever we determine, but that low poly count will then impact the quality. So,
right.
You know, you're not, I suppose that's the difficulty with something that's got a lot of texture in it, that's not just flat. You know, we're like talking about stuff in the round, and so, you know, that does make a big difference. But I don't think they necessarily need to be, they don't need to be huge, I don't think.
Okay, well, in terms of, Suzanne, to answer your question about Articheck, we don't currently have, you know, plans to integrate and have that happen. It would be, I do think it'd be interesting to explore it in the future, however. One thing that we are going to be introducing next month is video in our condition reports, but you won't be able to annotate in the video. You'll just be able to take video for your condition reports, and you can make notes, you know, in the audio file, and then you can also have images that are annotated and a form to go along with it. So I think that's going to be the kind of step one of multimedia condition reports. With step two, we would love to include annotation on videos or 3D scans, and that is something that we're going to be looking into. And Matthew, I would love to discuss that further with you, but probably here is not the time or place to do that. But certainly it's something that we will be looking into in the future. So how do you indicate the scale of an object is another question.
Well, these are, before they're imported, would be scaled. You can also scale it on this software that I'm showing you right now. If you edit the item, and you can scale it to a human being, but that's like fairly inaccurate. This can be scaled. This will be scaled in the software prior to importing, like exporting it from that software and importing it into Sketchfab itself. So that's how scale is shown. I mean, one other thing, in fact, that I was going to show you, which is something we've been working on, which is actually something that's really fresh at the moment, which is a gallery that we've made. This is not a real gallery. This is a rendered space. And so these are us placing some of the artworks in here to experiment with this layout and the lighting and the textures and the renders, and to see how we can utilize these platforms. And so in terms of scale, I think you can probably see it's actually a little bit clunky at the moment, just because I've got so many windows open, and that does impact the speed. But if I get rid of some of these, and this tour, for example, like we can, I mean, like this imported is to scale to the millimeter as we measure it and go off artwork dimensions when we shoot it. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so I think that's sort of answer. Yeah.
Didn't you also mention that a lot of your clients might download an app in which so for example, the collector on their end that's interested in this sculpture could download an app and then look at it in their, you know, garden or their house, or, you know, wherever they might be looking at. I
mean, this is maybe, it speaks to like
reality.
Yes, exactly. And maybe it speaks to how, I don't want to say behind, well, I should probably just say behind the art world is in some respects. But Pixar and Apple Max set up a file type that can be exported from various different platforms, but that these files exist as. And, you know, I could send it to you now, for example, and you could literally click on it in a text message and it would open up the camera on your phone. It's like Apple specific, but you could open it up as this file type. It's called a USDZ, and like you can do the same thing. You can do exactly that. You can place it in whatever environment you want to. And so that, I think, is just a really interesting thing for people to start doing. I mean, you know, people have been doing this with trainers for years. There's a trainer app called Sneaker Fit, and you can literally like spin the train around, you point the camera at your feet, and the trainers are on your feet. You know, like it's, the commercial world is like far more experimental, I suppose, in that fashion. And
right. Well, interior design too, right? And you can do that with furniture.
Yeah, I mean, made.com used this same platform, Sketchfab, to host a bunch of their things. Yeah, it's a really interesting time for people to see like sales increases based on their like representation of the thing that they're trying to sell, I guess. So
well,
yeah,
and people picturing it in the space that they would like it to go, right?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's always helpful.
Yeah.
I think the biggest barriers to online sales, you know, Hiscock's online art market report has been saying for years that the biggest overall is lack of physical inspection, and that's why, you know, we created a PDF summary export to try and help, you know, as a sales tool to try and help address that issue. And I think that one of the other big issues for online sales is absolutely, you know, in terms of the physical inspection, getting to know it from a visual, obviously, it sounds even silly for me to say it, but, you know, really understanding the look and the feel and the texture and the nuance of the color and how it will look in the space, and trying to visualize that. Of course, those are major concerns for any collector. And I think we can all relate to it in terms of just normal online buying. I last night was looking for a lampshade for that lamp behind me, and you know, I'm always like, oh, is that color, you know, going to be? I'm ordering a sample of the fabric, and so I can see it, you know, not digitally because I wasn't sure, and it's a challenge. Yeah. It really is. So going to one of the other questions though, because we have quite a few here. Particularly interested in your scanning tech and the methodology for capturing the basis of the works, where if an object were standing, you would not see the bottom. Assuming you stitch the view from multiple angles, what software are you running? Blender, Unity? How is your Shoot Studio configured? It's very specific.
I'm not sure I can answer all of those, because I think I would ask the people that the guys that I work with that deal with all the tech side of things. But parts, you know, reality capture, different types of software that we use. In terms of where, if an object were standing, would you not see the bottom? I'm not quite sure I understand necessarily. In terms of if you're hosting a scan on Sketchfab, for example, you can limit the view so that you would not see the bottom or the underside. That can be a good thing for some and be terrible for others. It really depends on what the person wants to see. The studio situation has varied. Like I said, we've been really mobile with how we deal with it. And we've just sort of responded to the requirements of the people that we've been doing these for. The artists that we've been doing it for, it's tended to be a little bit more casual and less time sensitive. So, you know, yeah, things just morph and change, and it's been quite an organic thing. And it's not been something that we're like, oh, I don't, you know, what you're looking at right now is not the studio that we have. Do you know what I mean? I think it's probably quite important to say that this is not the time to be doing that for us.
Sure. We have a question about the security of Sketchfab, which is a good question.
You can limit the basically limit, you can't, I can switch off and on a download. So like none of them are downloadable, and these ones particularly are private. And so you can't, like this one on the left is less private because it's a sculpture that I own, so that doesn't bother me necessarily, but it is a platform that people tend to look to like not an open source necessarily, but to be able to download files, OBJ files. But you can limit that, and it depends on the subscription that you pay for, and it depends on the settings that you have. Yeah, so
Right, okay.
No, not anybody can access them. You can look at them and you can share the link and share them, but you can't, that's also dependent on the settings, but you can't download them unless you choose to. Yeah.
Right, okay. So I think that is a good answer for Charlie. Hello, Charlie.
There's another one about how do you navigate?
Are the points fixed, or can the viewer move freely around a sculpture?
We have done 9 points in this gallery today. So there are 9 points. There are hotspots. We're working on trying to get free mobility, but that is quite a big, that's incorporating gaming technology as well, which is something that we're, trying to work towards. But yeah, at the moment we're working with hotspots. So no, you could move freely, but we would have to render out each individual view. So in an ideal world, you'd have quite a few hotspots in this room so that you could then, it's actually still quite clunky. And yeah, so you could render out like different hotspots and then you would get different views.
So Jack, hello Jack, is also asking, having worked with various galleries, have you had interactions with artists firsthand that did not want their work digitized in this way, or were particular about the final result? Did Mika Schoenebar see any of this, but for example,
I'm pretty sure he has.
I imagine if he was really upset by it, that you would care about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because like ultimately, it depends how you look at what the artwork might, what the process even is doing. Like if you're looking at, is it a documentation? Is it a replica? Like how are you defining what it is that you're doing? So I suppose, would the artist have a problem with a representation of the artwork in a gallery space as an install shot, or would, you just see what I mean? So I haven't experienced like a difficult moment, because I feel like if that was a difficult moment, we wouldn't do it. Like if there was a question about that an artist had about its integrity, or whether it was something that felt contentious and they weren't happy with it, then I don't think it would be something we would do. And it's the gallery's responsibility to then deal with that. Like that's absolutely really kind of not in our, yes, I mean, I think that's up to the gallery to be responsible for looking after the artist and and what you do with the artwork. Ultimately, we look to represent realism, so they're digitally color corrected in a representation as accurately as possible that we can do. And these files are very sort of, from what we perceive as, really to the point, pretty much exact replicas of the thing. And so, yeah, that's our main concern. I wouldn't really necessarily look to start doing, things without permission, I suppose.
Good answer. So here's another one, which has been copied over from the chat, and I'll have to go look over, because I know there's a lot of questions in there too. What should one expect for scanning a piece of furniture? Say an armchair with visible glossy wood. How much time is involved? How much room in the studio is needed? And any rough idea of cost? Can one take measurement off this scan? There's a lot of questions there, actually, to unpack.
I'm not really sure what one would expect from a scan of furniture necessarily, in terms of, you know, a replica of the thing you're looking at. It is possible to say gloss the pieces of wood that were sections of the armchair. Fabric can sometimes be quite challenging because a weave can often, depending on the thickness of a weave, can be quite challenging, but you know, we're quite open to trialing things. In terms of cost, you know, with all of this stuff, it's actually just case by case. Like I can't, it's very difficult for us to blanket cost things, because every thing we've scanned has its own particular challenges, and those things have, you know, you learn as you go and you learn what's possible. And you know, we really thought that the glossy thing might be a difficult, you know, thing to, you know, and we've really worked at trying to sort of nail that, and that's been something that's been a real kind of feat to get to the quality that we want. And so I think, like, you know, how much room in the studio is needed, for example, like, you know, again, it really depends on the size of it. We've worked shooting these Yinka Shonobari sculptures in a studio that is probably 400 to 500 square feet. But that's been like, you know, we've been shooting with upwards of 4 digital SLRs at one point. And you know, they come in big cases, and you know, it's not like a small operation. Whether it would be worth scanning a piece of furniture that would be an armchair, I would say you probably, yeah, it's hard. It's everybody really just defines things differently in terms of value. So I wouldn't want to say that it wouldn't be worth it, but it just really depends on what that would be worth to the person.
Well, some furniture goes for an awful lot, let's face it.
I mean, that's it, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You know, it really could be something that's like super collectible, and that would be like an antique that would be worth a fortune, which would absolutely be, you know. But also, what I'm saying is that I don't want to say that it's not worth doing if the object isn't worth money. I don't know. Sometimes that seems quite sort of narrow-minded too.
Absolutely. And if, you know, we're talking about it from the public space point of view, actually that was one of my questions for you in terms of its applications to the art world. Obviously virtual gallery tours, we've gone over a little bit, and facilitating sales, but in terms of digitizing archives and collections, and you know, offering access for museums, you know, obviously there is potential there as well. I saw, for example, that Waddesdon Manor have done Matterport of some, like their drawing room, and you know, so there are some places that are attempting to do something along these kinds of lines to give their audience a picture and a feeling online.
Yeah.
Now when there's no other option, but clearly it's a different, it has a different purpose, there's a different budget, you know, it's a different kind of kettle of fish.
Yeah, I think again, like, maybe value is like a really interesting thing to think about when it comes to that. And I'm not, you know, I don't want to say that we're somehow saying that if it's, you know, somehow about worth and whether you should or shouldn't do something dependent on worth. But, you know, I think there are interesting applications to the digital side of how tours and 3D scanning of particular objects are looking. I think it's something, for example, that we have explored quite a few different avenues in terms of like how we want to sort of represent the artwork that we see or look at, and whether which avenue we choose to go down in terms of that, and tours and things. And I think applications, there are a lot of museums doing it all over the world, and I think that Matterport is like, can be a very reasonable reasonable solution to it. And I think that there's a direct kind of translation from exploring a house or a flat or an apartment, whatever, that can be put in there.
I'll just quickly share my screen to show you. I've brought it up just to give people a quick understanding of what that kind of thing, looks like.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So here is the red drawing room. You can there's a little captions. You get an idea of the space. It's obviously not the same kind of thing because you don't have maybe as much ability to interact with each object. And yeah, it's a different thing altogether. But it does, as you say, it can be useful, especially maybe in the public sector.
Yeah.
To give people a feeling of a space in a room where, especially because so many museums, what they do, and I have to say, this kind of drives me crazy when they talk about increasing access and digitizing their collections. What they're talking about is systematically creating digital JPEGs of individual objects in one or two views behind, with a white screen or whatever behind it. It could be like 100,000 things, right? And how do they organize those? A collection management system portal on their website with a search bar. So was fine, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but we've moved beyond that in terms of expectations of engaging and interactive experiences now, right? Online. So, that I love museums and their collections, and even I am like, doesn't sound that fun to do that. There may be a few exceptions to that where I'm kind of willing to do that, but here at least I can kind of zoom around and say, oh, cool, look at the the marble top on that armoire and the inlaid wood. How lovely. So I'll just stop sharing now. You've got a little idea.
No, I totally I think that's a very valid point though, and how people understand kind of what the digitization sort of in inverting commas means, and sort of whether people really want to, like, what that engagement really does mean, and I think again it probably goes back to what it's used for, really.
Well, I would rather, and if I were in charge kind of thing, if I had the same budget for a museum, I would much rather have them digitize in that kind of a way, or some kind of an interesting, engaging, 3D interactive way, a smaller portion of the collection, really the kind of jewels of the collection, rather than have a complete 100,000 things. I mean, really the 100,000 things approach is for researchers, which is fair, but it means that you are limiting your audience. Whereas the Matterport style approach is more expensive, obviously, per object. So you wouldn't be able to do it for everything. You wouldn't try to do it for everything, but you probably could engage a much larger audience with that, 10% or 5% or 1% of your collection that you were doing that for, right? So it has to do with your priorities. You have to think through these things strategically and make these kinds of decisions. Okay, sorry. Anyway, we've got a lot of chat and I feel bad for neglecting them, and we're going to finish soon. So let me quickly have a look here. So can you just kindly describe in detail the process of creating one item in 3D? Well, you've done that a bit already.
I don't want to give too much away.
Let's see. I mean, what you've said so far is that you can go in situ to the item, to the object in a studio with multiple cameras, taking thousands of images, and then you have post-production work back at the studio in order to add the gloss, add the different surfaces, look at the lighting, get everything looking just right, and then you provide a file that can be used in a lot of different ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In a nutshell, sounds
In a
like.
nutshell.
So let's see what else we've got here. It would be useful for a size indicator to be visible near an object to understand the scale, possibly a figure. Well, as you said, that is an option in the SketchUp.
Yeah, and also what we've
environment.
ended up doing, a bit like images that you see of an artwork when you see an image of an artwork, is that underneath the artwork, there are all the dimensions of the artwork. I mean,
right.
You know, it's a little bit more challenging. It would be a lot more challenging maybe to plonk, a figure next to one of those sculptures. Also, just that small one by Zebedee Armstrong, which is the black and white, black and red, even black, white, and red object, is about 30 centimeters tall. It's quite small, so it might look quite.
Well, I think it also depends on your what you're doing it for, right? I mean, Susan Blackney, I believe, is a conservator, so I think she's thinking about it from like a technical,
right, which would make sense. Yeah,
right. Whereas if you're trying to sell it, it's a different aesthetic.
Absolutely.
So Emma is asking about, does an app already exist specifically for the art world to see objects in your home, or are we waiting for the first gallery to try it? Didn't you say that one of your clients has been doing this already? One of your gallery clients has been getting their collectors to look at things,
I think
augmented reality in their homes?
Yeah, there are other I think that there, like, I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about the whole, about everybody's endeavors, but I do think that there is app development to try and
Come on, Matthew.
to do exactly that. I know that Vortic also have been working on an app that is to do that. A function on their app which can do that.
The Met Unframed is doing it, according to Axel Clissen, and Hauser and Wirth did it for Miami. Sad I missed that.
Yeah, Hauser and Wirth they've got a whole team of internal people doing it.
Yeah, so they are on it. And they did that before, and I heard that I think I read somewhere that they actually put that art lab together before COVID because of sustainability concerns. So, good on them.
I think Zwerner have done a similar thing in terms of having an internal department that deals with a lot of their things in New York in terms of their digitization. This is, I'm absolutely not also going to, pretend that we somehow are the only ones out there doing it, because there are definitely people that have got the budgets to do it. And that's the other thing, is that, that's definitely something that a lot of people have tried to push prior to the pandemic even hitting. So,
well, and didn't you also tell me in our first call that one of your thoughts or goals is kind of, yes, the mega galleries have the kind of the means and the budget to do something themselves, but you're offering a service to, a different profile of gallery that might not have those kinds of means, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the people with, a bit like most industries, I think the people with really deep pockets have probably already sort of looked into these things, but I don't necessarily always believe in their quality being really up there, number one, but also I mean, they should absolutely do that, and that's something that they can afford to do, which is great. But I think that I think we're kind of looking to do things in a sort of broader, maybe more organic way, rather than it being,
well, like us, for example, take Articheck. Yes, there are there's one or two proprietary apps for condition reporting out there, right? Like Art Reports was one that Crozier did. And the thing about creating a proprietary application for a process, or whatever it might be, some kind of technological solution that you want to have, is that it's very expensive. You have to maintain it. You have to train all your staff in it. And it's just, you know, not, it's frankly not the way things are done these days in the software world, right? The reason we have SaaS products like Articheck is that you then are sharing the cost of development and training and, you know, visuals of how to use it and all of these things amongst many customers. And this is what makes it affordable for everyone. So it's just a different model, but also because we're focused on it entirely, it's all we do. You know, we're frankly going to do it better than another company that is doing it as a kind of not their main focus.
Yeah.
It's, you know, kind of, it's obvious really when you think about it. And that's why, you know, we have third-party SaaS, you know, companies all over the place for many reasons and many things. That is the future, and everybody doing their own thing is just kind of like an outdated model, really, to be honest. But so Johan Jepsen is sharing a link with us to see what museums are doing with Sketchfab.
Yeah, I just actually just looked at that. Thanks for that. That's really good. I think also the British Museum have done something like this back in like 2018 or something. A few years ago, they'd done a similar thing where a lot of they got quite a few of their things scanned that people could download, and there was like a sort of info thing, a music playing, and it was like a really interactive platform.
Can you guys see this? I'm just sharing my screen.
Yep.
Because I've got the link here. So yeah, this is very cool. I can turn things around. And yeah, that is a nice way to see collection material. You can click on it. And load it. There you go. Very nice. So I'm just going to stop that. So we've just got a few more minutes because we are at time now. So I'm going to try to see if I can find one or two more questions. If there's any that pop out at you, Matthew, feel free.
I quite like this, the one about size limitation. We're kind of Axel Clissen. There's a I've had quite a few questions about this sort of recently. Yeah, actually quite recently about a particular work which is quite large and very heavy, and there can be limitations, absolutely, but that doesn't necessarily need to mean that it's not doable, but that would be reflected in your next question, the cost. So like, I think like, you know, it's just like, yeah, if you have to hire like a MTech or some team of like shippers with a gantry to lift up the object, to be able to turn it, to be able to do certain things, to like, yeah, you have, it becomes like a really large project, which would be really costly. Artwork specific, I guess I'm talking about. The price point really depends on, it really depends on size, value, texture, and materials. If you do them on a larger scale, yeah, there are, it can be much more cost effective. You know, really ranging from like 500 quid to like, you know, 5 grand. And I know that there are some sort of, you know, numbers flying around that seem pretty high in terms of what people are charging, but I think ultimately it comes around to like a lot of what goes around it, the work that's involved, that's the technical side of things, the logistics, the practical things, and then the shoot, and then the post, and it's like what happens afterwards. So yeah, I think, you know, ultimately I think that it can be cost effective, but again, I hate to sound like a politician, but it really does depend on the thing.
Well, look at it this way. I think that this is what I think a lot of people in the art world are perceiving as like a new cost, an extra cost, a different cost that they've never had to, you know, think about or deal with before. And I think that's like psychologically difficult for people. But for
well, they probably saved loads of money not doing art fairs this year. So
Right, exactly. No, it's true.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you
Maybe
have
it's
to
just
look
time to shift the boundaries,
the
or not the
thinking.
boundaries, the
Absolutely.
parameters of like what people are spending money on, and actually like what people want who are on the other side of the world. Like, can you still go with JPEGs? Like, maybe, yeah, but maybe there's like
Well,
kind of a demand for something a bit different.
let me tell you that I have spent thousands on videos about Articheck, concept videos with post-production case studies. Each
Mm,
video, you know, uh, our first concept video cost, I think, £7,000 or £8,000. That was like 7 years ago. And that is exactly for that reason, so that we have a high quality marketing tool that people from across the world can see and hopefully, be interested in and inquire about. And
yeah,
that is, that's the world of digital marketing. So,
yeah,
it doesn't, everything of good quality costs money. And I think people in the art world, they just kind of need to get to grips with that. And of course, art fairs cost a huge amount of money normally. And yeah, this is a different channel, isn't it? And so it's where you
yeah.
want
And I
to
think I
put your
think
resources.
that exactly, and I think that also the potential is really exciting. So it's not just that you can spin the object, like what you can do with that file is really quite progressive. And so whether that means that we've made some sample videos, some renders of even just having the sculpture in one place and the lights kind of flickering on and off, and suddenly you start seeing the work, and then
Mm.
the light can come on and you can see the work, and there's these backdrop. You can make so much happen, and I think it's just like this is where maybe it'll be slow to sort of with the uptake on that, but like yeah, these things can happen. There can be really interesting things that can happen in terms of like replicating what those big panning shots across a sculpture might be, because you can actually just do that with the 3D object, with the background that's been rendered, and you can pan across it and you can pan around it, and you can have like you could just have so much more. So I think it's really potentially just a really sort of exciting place to be in terms of what can happen with those after, like once you've got the OBJ file, there is so much more that can be done.
Well, like in movies, right? I mean, if you look, and I love a lot of the like special effects in old movies. We for New Year's we watched Total Recall, and I love the special effects in there. And we were thinking about how different it must have been in those times so long ago
Yeah,
to
exactly.
to produce these effects, and how now everything is CGI. And of course the cost implications are very different, and not that CGI is cheap, but if you just it's just very different, isn't it? um so yeah, I think that those are all good points. Now I think we probably need to stop pretty soon. We're a little
Yeah.
bit over time now, but is there one more question that you're keen on answering that you can?
um I think there's one that's quite interesting about the Alex, why not show 3D SLS scanned sculpture monochrome with no texture so that you can show the real shape and volumes as new approach to the work? I think one thing that I personally, I wouldn't, yeah, personally struggle, but also just like it's quite a challenging thing to try and do, is that like one thing I suppose to remember in terms of what we're doing is when it's a commercial endeavor, like a Yinka Shonobari sculpture, for example, like I think if you then withdraw or take away all the, like you show the texture, I do think that that's like quite an amazing thing to see. Absolutely agree with you. However, it becomes like a different depiction of the object. So I think it can be quite challenging to deal with whether that, going back to the question earlier about the artist not being particularly happy with something that's public, I feel like that would be something that could potentially cause an issue, depending on where it's placed and where it is, but with the gallery or the artist. So yeah, like that can be, I think, somewhat of a challenge at points to be, you know, really into the 3D aspect of it with something which is someone else's artwork, because there are tentative, you know, I wouldn't say copyright or sort of, you know, depictions of the artwork that suddenly become like different to the artwork, I suppose. So I think that there's like,
sorry.
Go on.
Maybe you should have a workshop at DAX. You know, DAX, the Society for Artists. They represent like 26,000 artists, and I'm sure they'd be interested to chat to you. They're really interested in you know, technology and how it can affect artists.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think that is the danger of, it really depends on the client and it depends on the artwork, but I could see that being, that would be my reservations or the difficulty with that, you know, just to show publicly, I guess.
Sure.
But I mean, I could have absolutely probably done this talk and shown, you know, you could see the sort of lineage of the process, and to see sort of the mesh on it and the, you know, the stuff that comes before the final product. But maybe that's for another time. Now it's 6:10.
Yes, I think we better stop there. But thank you so much for joining us. And we will, as always, we will have a recording that will be out to everyone within the next few days. And we also, I think we've been asked a couple times about the links being shared publicly. So Emma, I will ask you to help with that, and with Matthew, whatever you're happy to share.
Yeah.
And with maybe the link from Johan Jepsen as well, for the museum kind of angle on things. And thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon. So
thank you.